So I take it that we can all agree that the Russians did, in fact, interfere and meddle in the 2016 elections. Your observations on that are consistent with what our intelligence community reports. Is that correct? Mr. Stretch?
That's correct, Senator.
Mr. Edgett?
That's correct.
Mr. Salgado?
That's true.
Okay. And I gather that all of your companies have moved beyond any notion that your job is only to provide a platform and whatever goes across it is not your affair.
Senator, our commitment to addressing this problem is unwavering. We take this very seriously and are committed to investing as necessary to prevent this from happening again. Absolutely.
Mr. Edgett?
Absolutely agree with Mr. Stretch. And this type of activity just creates not only a bad user experience, but distrust for the platform. So we are committed to working every single day to get better at solving this problem.
Mr. Salgado?
That's the same for Google. We take this very seriously. We've made changes, and we will continue to get better.
And ultimately, you are American companies, and threats to American election security and threats to American peace and order are things that concern you greatly, correct?
That is certainly correct.
Agree.
That's right.
What I would like to do, and I don't have the time for it here, is to ask you all to answer a question for the record that I will ask now, which is, give us the key benchmarks of how you have improved at dealing with this problem in recent months or recent years, what your goalposts are ahead that you've not yet achieved but you're slated or intend to achieve to deal with this problem. That's 2. And 3 would be, what does success look like to you? What can you come to us and say, we have accomplished X, and therefore you as a Congress don't need to worry about legislating in this space or creating regulations or holding more hearings because we have now got America's back. Can you do that for me?
Yes.
You are all also corporations that have, I believe, headquarters and significant operations in the state of California. California has a state law regarding disclosure. Presumably you comply with that state law with regard to customers in California. Are there lessons and recommendations that you would have for us in evaluating the effectiveness of the California disclosure law? And given the short amount of time I have, I suppose we should give me just a very, very brief, do you follow that law, and a very brief response to it, and then we can flesh out in a question for the record how much of a model that might be for this committee to look at.
So, Senator, we comply certainly with all applicable law. In terms of disclosure going forward, we made an announcement last week that really drew on some of the ideas from the Honest Ads Act, which Senator Klobuchar had introduced, intended to bring ads transparency really into the political realm, creating a repository of searchable ads, providing innovative ways to enable advertisers to meet their disclosure requirements, and requiring documentation and information so that we can ensure that advertisers are not running political ads on Facebook in violation of federal election law.
So let me ask what will probably be my last question of this round anyway, which is that you are all prepared, as I understand it, to undertake to make sure that you can trace content that goes across your platform that qualifies for concern in this area back to a legitimate source. So you know if it's a Russian who's actually running it, so you know if it's an imaginary entity that's actually running it. How do you deal with the problem of a legitimate and lawful but phony American shell corporation, one that calls itself, say, Americans for Puppies and Prosperity, has a Dropbox as its address and a $50 million check in its bank book that it is using to spend to manipulate election outcomes? Start with Mr. Edgett this time, because we got Mr. Stretch last time.
I think that's a problem. We're continuing to look into sort of how do you get to know your client. So we are also, like Mr. Stretch said, proud of the work we've done around ads transparency and the ads transparency center that we're building, and think that kind of center really allows the American citizen to be educated about who is running an ad, who is paying for the ad, what other ads that they're putting out into the world, and what they're targeting. And believe that we'll have to figure out a good process to understand who those customers actually are that are signing the contract with Twitter to run ads.
You admit that if you trace it all the way back to an American corporation, let's call it Americans for Puppies and Prosperity, and it's actually a shell corporation, and you don't know who's behind it. It could be Vladimir Putin. It could be a big, powerful American special interest. It could be the North Koreans or the Iranians. You need to be able to penetrate the obscurity of the shell corporation, correct?
We're working on the best approach to getting to know the clients and getting to know who's behind the entities that are signing up for advertising.
Thank you. Thanks, Chairman.